Oh gosh, look at me. Look at me. What's up, you guys? What's up? What's up? It's me and Nate. We're back at it again. Come here, Nate. Okay, never mind. He doesn't want to be seen today. I wanted to come on here and talk to you guys about something I just started reading. And I think I want to read it to you guys. So let me clean off the... Okay. So, I don't know if you guys watch Bailey Sarian, but she is a makeup guru, a makeup channel. But on Monday, she does Makeup Murder Mystery, right? She's got a huge channel, like 300,000 subscribers. And today, hello, girl. Hello, Gold Dust. Today, she talked about, or yesterday, she put up a video about Ed Gein. Now, I just got done Googling all the images from Ed Gein's story. The lampshade that he made out of human skin. The belt that he made out of women's nipples. The bodysuit that he made out of women's skin because he wanted to dress up like a woman. A chair that he made that was upholstered with women's skin. All of these things were with skin. Yeah, he would go to the cemetery and he would snatch bodies. Him and his friend Gus worked there, and would help him dig up bodies. And then Edward would take the bodies and take their skin. Well, he was like, listen, the skin from these bodies is crunchy, so I need to get fresh skin. And that's when he decided to murder Miss Warden from the local hardware shop. Well, that intrigued me to come on here and talk to you guys about this guy named Albert Fish. So, I can't memorize all this information, so I'm going to read it to you. Albert Fish, here we go. Albert Fish was born in Washington, D.C. on May 19th, 1870, to Randall and Ellen. Fish's father was American, of English ancestry, and his mother was Scottish-Irish. His father was 43 years older than his mother, and 75 years old at the time of his birth. Old guy. Getting that lady pregnant. Fish was the youngest child and had 3 living siblings, okay? Walter, Annie, and Edwin. He wished to be known as Albert after a dead sibling and to escape the nickname Ham and Eggs that he was given at an orphanage in which he spent much of his childhood. So, he spent a lot of his childhood in this orphanage because his mom couldn't take care of him. So she just took him to the orphanage and dropped him off. His family had a history of mental illness. His uncle suffered from mania, and his brother was confined in the state hospital. Hey, Jason, we're talking about this guy, Albert Fish, because it just is so interesting. And his sister was diagnosed with a mental affliction. 3 other relatives were diagnosed with mental illnesses, and his mother had oral and visual hallucinations. So they were all sick in the head. They all had mental illness. I mean, and when you're born to somebody with mental illness, you're usually going to have mental illness too, right? Or you can. Oh my God. I just went and saw the pictures of this belt that Edward Gein made out of women's nipples. And I do have to say, it was quite a creative genius he was. Fish's father, Randall, was a riverboat captain, and by 1870, a fertilizer manufacturer. The elder Fish died in 1875 at Washington 6th Street Station of a heart attack. So his dad passed away of a heart attack. Okay? Fish's mother then put her son into St. John's Orphanage in Washington, where he was frequently abused. Oh, man. He began to enjoy the physical pain that the beatings brought him. Of this time at the orphanage, Fish remarked, "I was there till I was nearly 9, and that's where I got started wrong. We were unmercifully whipped. I saw boys doing many things they should not have done." By 1880, his mother had a government job and was able to go get him from the orphanage, right? So, can you imagine your mom taking you to the orphanage at like 2 years old and leaving you there until you're 9 years old, and then getting a job when you're 9 and going back and getting you. Hey, baby, I'm back. Right? In 1882, at age 12, he began a relationship with a telegraph boy. The youth introduced Fish to such practices as drinking urine and eating feces. Fish began visiting public baths where he could watch other boys undress, and spent a great portion of his weekends on these visits. Throughout his life, he would write obscene letters to women whose names he acquired from classified advertising and matrimonial agencies. Hey, Dwayne, just listen. So now we're going to talk about, so that's in childhood. That's at 12 years old. He's drinking urine. He's eating feces. He's watching boys undress. He's sending letters in the mail to women that he finds in the classifieds, okay? Now, his early adulthood, okay? By 1890, Fish arrived in New York City, and he said at the point he became a prostitute, and he began raping young boys. So he's a prostitute. He is selling his body, right? Okay, and then he starts getting boys and just having sex with them, raping them. In 1898, his mother arranged a marriage for him with Anna Mary Hoffman, an arranged marriage. This will fix him. Who is 9 years his junior. They had 6 children: Albert, Anna, Gertrude, Eugene, John, and Henry Fish. Throughout 1898, he worked as a house painter. He said he continued molesting children, mostly boys younger than age 6. He later recounted an incident in which a male lover took him to a waxworks museum, where Fish was fascinated by a bisection of a penis. After that, he became obsessed with sexual mutilation. In 1903, he was arrested for grand larceny and was sentenced to incarceration in Sing Sing. Around 1910, while he was working in Wilmington, Delaware, Fish met a 19-year-old man named Thomas Kedden. He took Kedden to where he was staying, and the two began a sodomistic relationship. It is unclear whether or not Fish forced Kedden to do these things, but in his confession he implies that the man was intellectually disabled. So this is a thing that he liked to do. He liked to hook up with guys who were either slow, mentally ill, and even poorer black kids. Listen, you'll hear. After 10 days, Fish took Kedden to an old farmhouse where he began to torture him. The torture took place over 2 weeks. Fish eventually tied Kedden up and cut off half of his penis. I shall never forget his scream or the look he gave me, Fish later recalled. He originally intended to kill Kedden, cut up his body, and take it home, but he feared the hot weather would draw attention to him. Instead, Fish poured peroxide over the wound, wrapped it in a Vaseline-covered handkerchief, and left a $10 bill, kissed Kedden goodbye, and left. Took first train I could get back home. Never heard what became of him, or tried to find out, Fish said. I'm not laughing. So this dude was a straight prostitute. He's like, hey baby, thanks for the good time. Put $10, wrapped his pee-pee up, and left. In January 1917, Fish's wife left him for John Straub, a handyman who boarded with the Fish family. Fish then had to raise his children as a single parent. After his arrest, Fish told a newspaper that when his wife left him, she took nearly every possession the family owned. He began to have auditory hallucinations. He once wrapped himself in a carpet, saying that he was following the instructions of John the Apostle. It was about this time that Fish began to indulge in self-harm. He would embed needles into his groin and abdomen. After his arrest, x-rays revealed that Fish had at least 29 needles lodged in his pelvic region. He also hit himself repeatedly with a nail-studded paddle and inserted wool doused with lighter fluid into his anus and set it on fire. While he was never thought to have physically attacked or abused his children, he did encourage them and their friends to paddle his butt with the same nail-studded paddle he used to abuse himself. He soon developed a growing obsession with cannibalism, often preparing himself a dinner consisting solely of raw meat and sometimes serving it to his children. In about 1919, he stabbed an intellectually disabled boy in Georgetown, Washington. Fish chose people who were either mentally handicapped or African American as his victims. So you hear that, my black viewers? You would have been his next victim. He liked that dark meat. Explaining that he assumed these people would not be missed when killed. He would later claim to occasionally pay boys to procure him other children. Fish tortured, mutilated, and murdered young children with his implements of hell, a meat cleaver, a butcher knife, and a small handsaw. On July 11th, 1924, Fish found 8-year-old Beatrice Keel playing alone on her parents' Staten Island farm. He offered her money to come and help him look for rhubarb. She was about to leave the farm when her mother chased Fish away. Fish left but returned later to the Keel's barn, where he tried to sleep, but was discovered by Hans Keel and forced to leave. During 1924, the 54-year-old Fish, suffering from psychosis, felt that God was commanding him to torture and sexually mutilate children. Shortly before his abduction of Grace Budd, Fish attempted to test his implements of hell on a child he had been molesting named Cyril Quinn. Quinn and his friend were playing box ball on a sidewalk when Fish asked them if they had eaten lunch. When they said they had not, he invited them to his apartment for sandwiches. While the two boys were wrestling on Fish's bed, they dislodged his mattress. Underneath was a knife, a small handsaw, and a meat cleaver. They became frightened and ran out of the apartment. Fish remarried on February 6, 1930 in Waterloo, New York to Estella Wilcox, but divorced after only 1 week. Fish was arrested in May of 1930 for sending an obscene letter to a woman who answered an advertisement for a maid. Following that arrest and one in 1931, he was sent to Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital for observation. On May 25, 1928, Fish saw a classified advertisement in the Sunday edition of the New York World that read, "Young man, 18, wishes position in country. Edward Budd, 406 West 15th Street." On May 28, 1928, Fish, then 58 years old, visited the Budd family in Manhattan under the pretense of hiring Edward. He later confessed that he planned to tie Edward up, mutilate him, and leave him to bleed to death. He introduced himself as Frank Howard, a farmer from Farmingdale. Fish promised to hire Budd and his friend Willie, and said he would send for them in a few days. He failed to show up, but he sent a telegram to the Budd family, apologizing, and sent a later date. When Fish returned, he met Grace Budd. He apparently changed his intended victim from Edward to Grace, and quickly made up a story about having to attend his niece's birthday party. He convinced the parents to let Grace accompany him to the party that evening. The elder Albert Budd was a porter for the United States Equitable Life Assurance Society. Grace had a younger sister. The police arrested 66-year-old Superintendent Charles Edward Pope. What? He had a sister, 2 older brothers, Albert Budd. Okay. Grace left with Fish that day, but never returned. The police arrested 66-year-old Superintendent Charles Edward Pope on September 4th, 1930 as a suspect accused by Pope's estranged wife. He spent 100 days in jails. Okay, he was not found guilty. Then he writes a letter to Grace's mom. "Dear Mrs. Budd, this is from Albert. In 1984, a friend of mine shipped as a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma, Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco to Hong Kong, China. On arriving there, he and 2 others went ashore and got drunk. When they returned, the boat was gone. At that time, there was a famine in China. Meat of any kind was from $1 to $3 a pound. So great was the suffering among the very poor that all children under 12 were sold to the butchers to be cut up and sold for food in order to keep others from starving. A boy or girl under 14 was not safe in the street. You can go in any shop and ask for steak, chops, or stew meat. Part of the naked body of a boy or girl would be brought out and just what you wanted cut from it. A boy or girl's behind, which is the sweetest part of the body, and sold as veal cutlet, brought the highest price. John said there so long he acquired a taste for human flesh. On his return to New York, he stole 2 boys, one 7 and one 11. Took them to his home, stripped them naked, tied them in a closet, then burned everything they had on. Several times every day and night he spanked them, tied them in closet, then burned everything they had on. Several times every day and night he spanked them, tortured them to make their meat good and tender. First he killed the 11-year-old boy because he had the fattest ass and of course the most meat on it. This is the letter! Okay, every part of his body was cooked and eaten except the head. Except the head, bones, and guts. He was roasted in the oven, all of his ass, boiled, broiled, fried, and stewed. The little boy was next. Went the same way. At that time, I was living at 409 East 100th Street, right side. He told me so often how good human flesh was. I made up my mind to taste it. On Sunday, June 3rd, 1928, I called on you at 406 West 15th Street, bought you pot cheese, strawberries. We had lunch. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her on the pretense of taking her to a party. You said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Westchester I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped all my clothes off. I knew if I did not, I would get her blood on them. When all was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry and tried to run downstairs. I grabbed her and she said she would tell her mama. First, I stripped her naked. How she did kick, bite, and scratch. I choked her to death, then cut her in small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms, cook, and eat it. How sweet and tender her little ass was, roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body. I did not fuck her, though. I could have, had I wished. She died a virgin. Can you imagine getting a letter like that in the mail about your daughter that has gone missing? Police investigated the letter. The story concerning Police investigated the letter. The story concerning Captain Davis and the famine in Hong Kong could not be verified. The part of the letter concerning the murder of Grace, however, was found to be accurate in its description of the kidnapping and subsequent events, although it was impossible to confirm whether or not fish had actually eaten parts of Grace's body. The letter was delivered in an envelope that had a small hexagonal emblem with the letters NYPCBA, representing New York Private Chauffeurs Benevolent Association. Oh, wow, that's crazy. There's a whole bunch more about this dude, but he just literally liked to fuck little boys, eat their asses, eat girls' asses, cook them on the stove. So I just thought I'd read that a little bit of that to you guys. I hope y'all have a good day. I'm going to go take a shower. But, yeah, this is what I do when I'm, at home and I'm off. Hey, Calvin. He does sound like a real jerk, doesn't he? How did I find this? Okay, so I was over on my friend's, on Bailey's channel, and somebody commented, you need to do a video about Albert Fish. And I thought, who's Albert Fish? And I just looked it up.